Good afternoon. On behalf of Engineers Australia, I am delighted to welcome you to our Thought Leaders series, Transitioning Perth to a Leading Waterwise City. My name is Alicia Prince from Engineers Australia, and I'm the General Manager of the Victorian Division. I'll be hosting the session today. Firstly, in keeping with our custom, Engineers Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures, and to elders past, present and emerging. Before we get started, I'd like to recognise that today's webinar is being hosted with Engineers Australia's industry partner, Water Corporation. Water Corporation is the principal supplier of water, wastewater, drainage and bulk irrigation services in Western Australia to hundreds of thousands of homes, businesses and farms. Water Corporation directly employs more than 3,400 people across the state, providing a high level of expertise and strong commitment to communities. It manages $38 billion worth of assets that support the delivery of water services across an expanse of 2.6 million square kilometres. Today, you will hear from 7 speakers, followed by a panel discussion and Q&A. I encourage you to send questions through to our speakers via the chat box. I'd now like to welcome our first speaker, Winsome McLaurin, Waterwise City's Program Manager at the Western Australia Department of Water and Environment Regulation. Please welcome Winsome McLaurin.
Hi, my name's Winsome McLaurin. I'm from the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation, and I'm going to be telling you about the Waterwise Perth Action Plan and the 10-year program of work that goes along with it. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that I'm the Whadjuk Noongar people whose traditional land we're gathered on today. Where I am, I pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'm on Whadjuk Noongar Budja. So what you see there is the Waterwise Perth Action Plan 2019 to 21. And this is the first 2-year plan in a 10-year journey to transform Perth and Peel to leading waterwise communities by 2030. So it's led by my agency, Department of Water and Environmental Regulation, and we are the water manager for the state of Western Australia. So the context for this overall plan is that the climate of Perth, Western Australia, is becoming much hotter and drier. And at the same time, we've got urban development and the demand for water continuing to grow. So these are challenges that no single organisation can tackle on its own. And so the Waterwise Perth Action Plan is part of our state government's response to climate change. And it's actually the first state government water plan in about 15 years. Now, my other colleagues will give more of a background, particularly Ant from the Water Corporation, which is our primary utility for water here, about the Perth's water supply story and the demand management curve that we've been on for decades now. So in its first phase, the Waterwise Perth Action Plan brought together 8 agencies, and we have 11 on board for the next. As I mentioned, it's a 10-year kind of cumulative and iterative journey. So to achieve a waterwise city, and waterwise is the term that we use here in WA, it really refers very much to water-sensitive cities, water-sensitive urban design. It's a very holistic and long-term endeavour, and the approach of having successive plans allows us to iterate, recalibrate, and to build on those foundations. So this is our vision for the 10 years, is world-leading waterwise communities for Perth and Peel by 2030. Now, so the real drivers and context for this are very much about climate change. And you can see there this image on the right, which is of the globe. The southwest of Western Australia is one of the fastest drying parts of the planet under climate change. And so what that means is that we're going to get more and more frequent hot days, which we're already experiencing here in WA. This last summer, we had I think 4 heat waves, and we had 6 consecutive days over 42 degrees, which was just quite extraordinary. And that obviously has a direct impact on water use and also the health of our ecosystems, our wetlands, and coupled with declining rainfall. So you can see that image at the top of the slide that's also compounding those effects. And then this image on the bottom left is really another aspect of what the Waterwise program of work is trying to achieve, and that is the way that we design and deliver our urban form. And you can see there that some of our less fantastic moments have resulted in kind of eave-to-eave building, very little green space, very little canopy. And so effectively you're just creating intensification of urban heat. And in a hotter, drier future, that is going to be a real problem for amenity and livability, coupled with, of course, a growing population. So these are the challenges that we collectively across state government are seeking to address with a water-wise or water-sensitive city. So what is a water-sensitive city? And you can see here from this image, this is kind of a utopian, if you like, but this is what it can look like when designed really well. A water-wise city provides shading and green corridors. Those spaces also provide biodiversity and habitat. It reuses water in the landscape to provide urban cooling. So you can see there a kind of living stream. And that's also integrated stormwater management, that stream. And also it has vegetative treatment systems. So the water that is then infiltrating our groundwater and recharging our groundwater is necessarily being cleaned naturally. So this improves the health and biodiversity of our water environments, and it just incorporates water efficient and sustainable built form into this. And then overall what that means is that there's an enhanced connection for people into the environment, into their urban spaces, and they're more willing to be outside and also then more connected and value water more. So we have a better chance of getting people to act in those water-wise ways. So the plan is set up at 4 scales. So the household and building work is really your foundation, and that is the water efficiencies, because inherent in creating this green, livable amenity is that we're receiving less water through our rainfall, and yet we kind of need more water in the hotter, drier future. So we have 2 pressures on us, but we also have a kind of dichotomy that we need to share with the public. That is about, well, on the one hand, we're saving water under this plan, and on the other, we're kind of spending water to create these green spaces. So under the household and building, that is really where most of the water efficiencies work happens. And so we're really talking about our fixtures, our taps, our fittings. And then at the next scale, the precinct and suburb is the kind of community and environment that was just in that last slide. And that is how we design those urban spaces. It's about our public open space. And then building on that is the city and urban, and that's the stuff that we're doing at city scale, and that's somewhat about our policies, the strategies, the things that really guide those waterwise outcomes on the ground. And then government leading is something that we heard really strongly from stakeholders, and particularly the development industry, is that they really wanted to see us as government showing them what does leading waterwise design look like, how do we make that happen in the real world. And so in that development space, we have really strong partners in Development WA, Department of Communities, which used to be Department of Housing, and so is responsible for all of our social housing in Western Australia, and Metronet, which is the really sort of city-shaping transport infrastructure program that we've got going here. So really, those are the 4 scales, and the next plan also is going to be set out in that same way. So as I mentioned, we've got 8 agencies in the plan for the first, and we are just in the process of getting to publication of or launch of the next plan in the coming months. So most importantly, we've got Water Corporation and, not most importantly, but we've got the water agencies leading this work. So that is Water Corporation, as I mentioned, is the utility, and us as the government agency that has responsibility for water management across the state. Very importantly, as I mentioned, we've got our development agent, the on-ground development WA, Metronet, Department of Communities. Department of Communities obviously also has an interface with our communities and through youth, women's issues, the whole kind of social aspect. We have Department of Finance on board that helps us to get things right at the top end, the way that we design things and commission them. Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries is a really key partner in terms of its interface to local governments. Sport is also to do with public open space, and we use groundwater to irrigate that here. So that is definitely a pressure for us with declining groundwater levels, and my colleague Mike will tell you about that further on. And then cultural industries, we've got a lot of really big cultural precinct redevelopments coming, so we've got a fantastic opportunity to influence that going forward as well. And Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, and of course we can't underestimate the importance of the planning system in getting these outcomes right. So really this plan is so much about working around the edges of all of our responsibilities and coming together across state government and achieving things that really truly are greater than the sum of our parts. So under the first plan, you can see here there's an infographic here, and it quite strongly does feature both the water efficiency story, and you can see there the millions of litres of water that have been saved under the various programs. But it also features the greening aspect, and that is the plantings, the tree canopy, really trying to build that climate resilience and that cooling going forward into that hotter, drier future. But of course, with 38 actions across 11 agencies, we couldn't put all of them into one infographic. So we've also put together all of these key stats, and a lot of these are very much about the development precincts and the amazing work that our development partners have been doing in this. And again, you'll hear from Development WA talking about one of the exemplars, which is not only amazingly water-wise, but also is very sustainable in terms of retaining its natural form, retaining as many mature trees and habitat as possible, and also something like 98% recycling on site of existing materials from the redevelopment of the previous high school site that was there. So you can see there some of the kind of headline figures that we delivered in the first 2 years of the plan. And in terms of looking forward, I just really need to give a massive nod to the CRC for Water Sensitive Cities. So it's a Cooperative Research Centre for Water Sensitive Cities, and that came to its natural end at the end of last financial year. And Water Sensitive Cities Australia is now carrying on that mission, housed in Monash's Sustainable Development Institute. And I would say to any of you that are looking at trying to understand what water sensitive is and what it means in practice, that this Water Sensitive Cities Benchmarking Index is a fantastic tool. You can simply Google it and you'll find it on the website. Perth was the first city, Greater Perth, to be benchmarked. So we were the beta testers back in 2016, and then we also re-benchmarked in 2021. And so what this gave us is across the 7 goals and 34 indicators, it told us where we had shifted significantly, and you can see the green loop there, and the areas where we needed to do more. And in achieving a water sensitive city in that really holistic way, where were the things that we needed to focus on more? And so this next plan going forward in that journey to a holistic Waterwise city for Perth and Peel, Waterwise communities, is really going to focus or add into that focus water quality, looking at our ecological health and spaces, and looking very much at our quality urban spaces. And so this is kind of part of the evidence base for that journey as we go forward. So I'll leave it there, but I'll let my colleagues continue on And I'd just say thank you so much for listening to Perth's Water Sensitive Journey. Thanks.
Thank you, Winsome, for sharing your insights. I'd now like to welcome our second speaker, Mike Hammond, Water Planner at the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation. Please welcome Mike Hammond.
Thanks very much for the introduction, and to Winsome for the great opening presentation. Hello everyone, it's wonderful to be here with you and the other panel members today to discuss Perth's transition to a leading waterwise city and the importance of sustainable management of the Gnangara groundwater system in this transition. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Whadjuk and Yuard Noongar peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of the land and waters covered by the Gnangara groundwater system, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. My presentation is focused on the new Gnangara groundwater allocation plan, which was released recently under Kep-Catagen as part of new measures to rebalance Perth and Mandra's groundwater resources in response to climate change. The goal of the new plan is to rebalance the Gnangara system by 2032 to secure Perth's lowest cost and most accessible water source and to support a healthy environment. The map here shows the extent of the Gnangara plan area, which covers 2,200 square kilometres in the area north of Perth, from the Swan River in the south to Ginginbrook in the north, the Darling Scarp to the east and the Indian Ocean to the west. This is a cross-section of the Gnangara system showing its three main aquifers. The Gnangara system is a complex and connected system. Groundwater is really important to Perth. Around 70% of all water used in Perth comes from groundwater, but groundwater also supports many unique natural environments in and around Perth, including our lakes, wetlands and threatened bank shear woodlands. These groundwater-dependent ecosystems are some of the most biologically diverse and ecologically productive parts of our environment, and they support much of Perth's wildlife. Managing Perth's groundwater resources is a tricky balance between optimising our use of groundwater for the benefit of the community while leaving enough in the ground to ensure the protection of the unique natural environments in and around our city. The Gnangara system currently supplies Perth with 275 gigalitres of water per year. Around 40% of that water is used for our public water supply. Just over 20% is used for agriculture. 16% is used for the irrigation of public parks and recreational spaces. So nearly all of Perth's public open space is irrigated with groundwater. And about 13% of the water used from the Gnangara system is used by domestic garden bore owners. Around 1 in 4 households in Perth have a garden bore to water their gardens with. A strong driver of the new Gnangara plan is climate change. Perth's climate is changing. It's getting hotter and drier. The figure here shows our declining rainfall. Average annual rainfall has declined by around 15% since 1975. There's also a high confidence under climate change modelling that the future climate for southwest West Australia will continue to become warmer and drier, leading to further reductions in rainfall and recharge into the future. And because of climate change, we're now taking more groundwater than is being recharged by our reducing rainfall, tipping our groundwater systems out of balance. This is what has happened to storage in the superficial aquifer of the Gnangara system, the top water table aquifer that supports wetlands and other groundwater-dependent ecosystems, because abstraction has become out of balance with reducing rainfall. Since 1980, climate change and groundwater abstraction have caused groundwater levels in the superficial aquifer to decline by up to 10 metres. The figure here shows that these groundwater level declines have led to over 1,000 gigalitres of storage loss in the superficial aquifer, the equivalent to around 1,000 Optus stadiums, that's our footy stadium here in Perth, full of water. Groundwater level declines have had a measurable and visible impact on the environment and have caused important wetlands like Loch McNess in Yanchep National Park to dry. The declines have also led to seawater intrusion along the coast, salinity issues along the Swan River, and acidification of groundwater in other areas. The extensive groundwater modelling and analysis undertaken for the new Gnangara plan, which included climate change projections and incorporated planned land use changes, show we need to reduce annual groundwater abstraction by 54 gigalitres during the next decade to achieve our objectives associated with rebalancing the system. The largest reduction in the new plan is a 30 gigalitre per year reduction, or a 27% reduction to groundwater licence to the Water Corporation for our public water supply. And this volume will be replaced by a new desalination plant that will be built at Alkimos to the north of Perth. The reduction to public water supply abstraction means that the reductions to other licensed groundwater use, including for agriculture and for public open space, could be limited to 10%. Through the new plan, garden bore use will also be reduced by reducing the sprinkler roster from 3 to 2 days in spring, summer and autumn, which will align that roster with the scheme water roster. The maps here are modelling outputs of the scenarios that supported the development of the plan. The map on the left is a scenario with no intervention to abstraction, so no active reductions to abstraction, and the map on the right is the scenario that includes the 54 gigalitre reduction to abstraction in the new plan. The blue areas are where there are modelled rises in levels, and the red areas are where there are modelled declines in levels, and these from our Perth Regional Aquifer Modelling System. The reductions in abstraction in the new Gnangara plan result in modelled rises in water levels in some key locations, stabilisation of levels in other areas, and a reduced rate and magnitude of decline in areas where climate is the overriding influence on groundwater levels. Under the reduced abstraction scenario in the plan, there are significant improvements in the outcomes for important groundwater-dependent ecosystems and for the volume of water at risk from water quality issues caused by salinity and acidity. The new Gnangara plan really underpins Perth's transition to becoming a leading waterwise city by helping to secure the Gnangara groundwater system as a long-term, sustainable water resource for Perth and a system that supports our precious and unique groundwater-dependent ecosystems. I'd like to finish by acknowledging everyone from within and outside the department, including all of the stakeholders who have worked really hard to develop the new plan. It was a long road to the release of the plan, and we wouldn't have got there if it weren't for a lot of dedicated work by many wonderful people over many years. If you'd like to have a look at the new plan, you can find it and all of the supporting documents on the wa.gov.au website. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike, for your input. I'd now like to welcome our third speaker, Antonietta Torre, Principal for Waterwise Cities at Water Corporation, Western Australia. Please welcome Antonietta Torre.
Thanks, Alicia. A brief introduction to Water Corporation. Our services and activities span 2.6 million square kilometres across the state, which is the largest area supplied by a single utility. Last year, we supplied 374 billion litres of water to 1.3 million homes and businesses, treated 170 billion litres of wastewater, and managed over 2,500 kilometres of drains. Healthy environments and maintaining the WA lifestyle in the face of climate change are important to our customers. With the land and assets that Water Corporation own and operate, we have a significant opportunity to respond to these priorities. Now, Winston and Mike have talked about the dramatic impact of climate change on Perth's water supplies. Since the 1970s, stream flow into our dams has reduced by 80%. This graph shows a reduction in stream flow to our integrated water supply scheme, our drinking water, over the last 20 years and predicted into the future. I'm focusing on the last 2 decades to highlight when we've secured new climate-independent water sources. The Perth Seawater Desalination Plant was the first of its kind in Australia and commenced production in 2006. A second plant, the Southern Seawater Desalination Plant, commenced production in 2011 and its capacity doubled to 100 billion litres a year in 2013. Australia's first full-scale groundwater replenishment scheme commenced recharge in 2017. Secondary treated wastewater undergoes advanced treatment and the recycled water is recharged to an aquifer, but it is stored before being abstracted and treated as part of the integrated water supply scheme. Stage 2 of the groundwater replenishment scheme completed construction this year. Half of Perth's drinking water is now supplied by climate-independent sources. Last month, the WA government announced construction of Perth's third desalination plant, powered by renewables, which will commence production in 2028, so that we're ready for the reduction in the Gnangara groundwater allocation, which Mike talked about. Diversifying our water supply is only part of the solution. Demand management has been very successful in WA. While our population has grown, shown by the red line, total water supplied, in green, has not increased at the same pace. Our suite of Waterwise programs has helped reduce demand. The drop in demand around 2001 was due to the introduction of the 2 days per week sprinkler roster. Adoption of water-efficient fixtures and appliances has also helped to reduce per capita water demand. But we've picked all the low-hanging fruit when it comes to demand management, and per capita demand has flatlined in recent years, which you can see shown in the blue. We needed to better understand water use behaviour to develop the next suite of tailored demand management approaches. A key project we have undertaken to help transition Perth to a waterwise city is the Home Study, our largest residential water use study ever undertaken. The study is providing Water Corporation the insights we need to predict, plan and provide for Perth's water future. 2,500 households participated in the study, representative of households across Greater Perth. Digital meters were installed at 1,800 households to collect high-frequency data, which provided an in-depth understanding of water use behaviour. The study combines cloud computing and advanced analytics with big data, market research, smart metering and home audits. The insights from the Home Study have helped us answer questions like how long are people taking showers for, how much water has been used in the garden in different seasons, are people switching off their sprinklers when it rains, and how many households have a leak and how much water are they losing. Commencing in 2018, the data and analytics from the Home Study have been used to inform our demand management strategy, which aims to help households save water and adapt to climate change while preserving the livability of our community. For 2 weeks out of each season, the collection frequency of meter readers was increased to 10-second intervals. Using a hybrid approach of unsupervised and supervised machine learning, raw meter readings were classified into end users. This allowed for a deeper understanding of how water is being used in the home. The chart on the right shows this end-use data displayed as an average per hour for a summer's day. There are 2 clear peaks in household water use, one for the morning and one in the evening, driven primarily by reticulation use outdoors in blue and showers indoors in red. Outdoor water use, shown by that mid-blue, darker blue and purple, accounts for 60% of total water use in summer. This shows that the greatest opportunity to save water is in the garden. In response to this finding, Water Corporation offered a number of rebates and programs to help households save water. This included the Waterwise Garden Workshops, rebates on weather smart irrigation controllers and a free sprinkler service. Showering is the main form of indoor water use. Water Corporation offered the showerhead swap program, where households could swap their old showerhead with a new water efficient one for free. This program saved 92 million litres of water. Using the year-long data, a leak detection algorithm was developed, which allowed the identification of leaks and their rates. The aqua colour shows water loss to leaks. We found approximately 15% of households have a leak. Most leaks were less than 10 litres per hour, but some very large leaks were also found. This represents billions of litres of water that could be saved across Perth and Peel households by fixing leaks. Water Corporation offered the Leak Assist program in 2020, which provided a $100 rebate to households towards the cost of fixing leaks. This program saved 300 million litres of water. In addition to our large centralised groundwater replenishment scheme, we're investigating the feasibility of local alternative supplies. Urban development is moving into land that's difficult to develop, land that is waterlogged in winter. The photo on the left is where a shopping centre is planned to be built in the Brabham urban development in the northeast corridor of Perth. The traditional approach to urban development in these types of landscapes is to import large volumes of sand fill, shown in the right-hand photo. This approach results in loss of remnant vegetation, carbon emissions associated with trucking sand, and a higher cost of development. Paradoxically, some of these areas don't have enough groundwater available to irrigate parks and ovals in summer. We've assessed the feasibility of harvesting and treating this drainage water and storing it in the groundwater aquifer to use later for irrigation. This is a diagram of subsoil drainage installed under the sand fill to control groundwater levels. Subsoil drainage is a slotted pipe used to convey groundwater. The drainage water can mobilise pollutants and transport them to receiving water bodies. So by capturing, treating and using this water as an alternative source, it also protects the environment. Our feasibility studies found a potential yield of up to 4 billion litres of subsoil drainage water per year by 2040. which could be used as supply for the Northeast Corridor growth corridor of Perth. Another way we're diversifying and multipurposing our assets is through the Drainage for Livability program, delivered in partnership with the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation and local government. Perth is seeking to increase urban density, and we can no longer afford to isolate land solely for the management of drainage. Traditional drainage was designed for one purpose: to store and convey floodwaters. Many of these sites are unattractive and offer little environmental benefits. The community and stakeholders are looking to make better use of all available land. We're working with local government and the community to develop spaces that deliver multiple benefits, such as aesthetics, habitat, greening and urban cooling. An example is the transformation of the Wall Street Stormwater Basin in Cannington, a project led by the City of Canning. The photo on the left shows the basin before the works. It was just a hole in the ground surrounded by a 6-foot fence. The site has recently been reshaped and revegetated, so it provides parkland for the local community in an area that had very little green space available. And it also creates habitat and enhances biodiversity. Amenity has also been increased by walkways, seating, a nature play area and artwork. There are opportunities to learn more about water, including real-time information on environmental conditions at the park and interactive education stations. Urban heat is a big issue in Perth that is only becoming worse. Water Corporation works with local government to help green our urban communities and encourage Waterwise landscaping. Examples are our Waterwise Greening Scheme, which provided $200,000 of funding to local governments over the 2-year action plan to help create cooler, greener and more sustainable neighbourhoods. The funding helped purchase over 82,000 Waterwise plants, 1,100 Waterwise trees, 425 birch transformations, as well as Waterwise demonstration gardens and workshops. We also funded the local government Urban Canopy Grants program to support local governments plant over 4,000 Waterwise trees to increase canopy cover and mitigate urban heat. Our Waterwise Schools education program reached over 49,000 students as part of the 2-year action plan. New resources under the program were completed, including 6 water and Aboriginal culture videos. Primary and secondary school digital lesson plans on water supply, conservation and sustainability were created for teachers to integrate into their classes. Our new Waterwise Experience incursion was released in 2021, which further expanded our reach to high schools. It's like a silent disco where tents are set up at the school and students are given headphones. They are then led through a series of audio narratives about Perth's water story. Close to 6,000 students took part in the Waterwise experience to learn about where water comes from and why it is so precious. The immersive experiences are supported with comprehensive lesson plans for teachers to extend understanding, continue those important conversations in the classroom, and really foster that next generation of Waterwise champions. Watercorp delivers a range of Waterwise programs to help councils, businesses, buildings and developments achieve Waterwise outcomes. All 32 of our Perth and Peel metropolitan local governments are now endorsed as Waterwise councils, and 25 of these have achieved gold recognition for their commitment to developing sustainable, livable communities and leading the way towards Waterwise WA. The program commenced in 2009 to build a cooperative working relationship with local governments to improve water efficiency in their communities. In more recent years, the program has evolved beyond water efficiency to recognise council achievements across those 7 goal areas of a water-sensitive city. Under our Waterwise Aquatic Centre program, delivered in partnership with the Leisure Institute of WA Aquatics, 27 of the 28 metropolitan aquatic centres are endorsed as Waterwise. These centres have committed to actions such as installing automated taps and toilets, introducing water-efficient appliances, daily water use monitoring, leak detection programs and Waterwise gardens. Amazingly, the aquatic centre industry has saved 1.5 billion litres of water since the program commenced in 2008. So you can see partnerships and collaboration have been absolutely key to delivering these successful projects under the Waterwise Perth Action Plan. We're now building on the success of this first plan, growing our partnerships and delivering the next suite of actions to continue our journey towards Waterwise communities in Perth and Peel. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonietta, for your input. I'd now like to welcome our 4th speaker, David Jones, Chief Sustainability Officer at Western Australian Government's Department of Communities. Please welcome David Jones.
Hello everyone, as you know I'm Dave Jones, the Chief Sustainability Officer at the Department of Communities. I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm speaking from Wajak Noongar Budja, the home of the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and acknowledge the emerging. Firstly, about the Department of Communities, we are WA's major human services department. It brings together the former Housing Authority, Child Protection Family Services, remote communities, as well as Disability Services Commission. So it's quite a large agency. We have 6,500 people and we do cover the whole state. Within that, we have over 36,000 public housing dwellings, and we're trying to add to that by a further 3,300 homes over the next few years, and also government and regional officer housing. So we've been involved in the Waterwise program for about 3 years now. We started off working solely with Water Corporation, and then as Waterwise Perth was launched, we joined that program, and have seen an amazing collaborative effort across numerous agencies. So in this partnership with Water Corporation and Department of Communities, we looked at how we could make some of our properties more water efficient. There were 1,000 properties that were audited throughout the Perth metropolitan region, and these were the tenants that had been identified as consuming far above average water consumption over the 12-month period prior. And so this has now evolved after that 1,000 ones that were audited. We're now looking at the whole of the state with the objective that no public housing tenant will be adversely impacted by inefficient water fixtures and fittings. So the program itself, first of all, there was an audit to see what fixtures and fittings were actually in each property. And then they were replaced with 3-star wells shower rows and 4-star wells toilet suites and basin tapware. Now, the 3-star wells was chosen for the shower rows because Water Corporation had found out that basically people will remove the restrictor if we go any higher. So rather than have that happen, it was more about putting in the 3-star wells shower rows and then working with behaviour change, which I'll discuss very shortly. So we also undertook leak detection, and also throughout the program we learnt that some hot water systems don't support low flow fixtures and fittings, so we needed to make sure that all hot water systems were capable of supporting that, otherwise people get cold showers, which did happen. With the leak detection though, that was quite a significant cause of problems and high bills. And the problem is sometimes tenants didn't know that there were leaks, and other times they were too scared to report it because they thought they would have to pay for the plumber, but that's not the case. So there was a bit of an education program around that. And the problem is if the leak is not detected and fixed straight away, then 2 months later the water bill comes out and we end up paying that as the landlord, and then pass the bill on to the tenant, who often get a shock. And so it really led us to tailor the behaviour change information to really get people identifying leaks and reporting them. So now we will talk about the behaviour change. So the tenant education program was something that was kept nice and simple, but some obvious things there, so such as what I was mentioning before, reporting leaks. If the taps are dripping, that educating tenants about how much that can actually cost them, and who to call if there is a leak. So noticing the areas around the house, if there's also noting if they notice any really green spots outside, to report that, and also basically just to keep an eye out and be aware of how the taps and tapware and the toilets should be operating. Showering, that was another thing, just educating them on the benefits of having a 4-minute shower, and hopefully them realising that shorter showers do reduce the bill. There's a bunch of other measures there that you might be able to see, but that was a really important program, and that was something that was the education piece went for both the tenants and also our staff. So housing service officers who went out there and met with tenants once a year. They would be educated to look out for, when they're inspecting the properties, look out for leaks, as well as signs of fixtures that will need replacing shortly. Also, they were taught how to engage with the tenants and just provide further information, because not all tenants might be able to read or even speak English. So that was something where the communications was very important. So the results after the first 1,000 audits, after 2 years, there's been a 40% reduction in water consumption. This has seen a 25% reduction in people's water bills, and surprisingly, a reduction in power bills based on the fact that when less water was being required to be heated. So there's multiple benefits there for the tenants, and that was something that caused a great deal of excitement for everyone involved, because it was relatively simple measures, and that's replacing the initial outlay of actually replacing fixtures and fittings was really had huge benefits for our tenants as well as ourselves. Water Corporation, it should be noted, has paid for all the audits and the replacement of the fixtures and fittings, so it's certainly a great win for us, and it helps Water Corp in their management of water resources, which are so valuable. So where we're taking it to now, based on this success, is we're rolling it out to potentially 10,000 homes. It may end up being more, but at this stage we're setting our sights on 10,000 homes. We've changed our technical specifications to require Waterwise fixtures and fittings. So it's little simple things there, and changing the information that's provided to our maintenance contractors as well, to when they come through and do refurbishments, make sure everything's Waterwise. All new builds are obviously Waterwise. We're also looking at landscaping, so we can, within the public housing space, look at creating biodiversity hotspots, mini biodiversity hotspots through a use of endemic species, and making sure that they're obviously suitable for low water use. And it needs to be robust as well, given some of the situations that they'll be planted in. We're also investigating the use of heat pump hot water systems in appropriate locations, trying to avoid those in remote areas, because there is a problem if something does go wrong. Who do you send out there? Is it an air conditioning specialist, a plumber, or an electrician? When they're vast state, so it's a huge cost there to send them out, potentially 3 of them. So we don't want to avoid that. But in the metro areas or the regional centres, definitely something we're looking at because of the efficiency of them. But yeah, so overall, that's my presentation, looking at the quick wins, the smaller scale initiatives, which have real benefits. So thank you very much for your time, and ready for the questions.
Thank you, David, for your input. I'd now like to welcome our 5th speaker, Kelly Cummings, Sustainability Strategy Lead at MetroNet. Please welcome Kelly Cummings.
Hi there. Well, thanks for all that information that has been presented today. So I'm here to talk about how MetroNet is fitting in with a Waterwise program. So my name is Kelly Cummings, and I'm the MetroNet Sustainability Lead in Perth. So first of all, what is MetroNet? So MetroNet is the single largest investment in public transport that Perth has seen, a vision of well-connected Perth with more transport, housing and employment choices. So we're delivering approximately 72 kilometres of new passenger rail and 22 new stations, and we're also doing planning around those stations, which is about 8,000 hectares of land. But I've got a short video just to show you. I'll give you a better explanation of what MetroNet is.
Western Australia is a rapidly growing state, with Perth's population predicted to reach 3.5 million by the year 2050. To best meet this growth, we must continue to invest in job-creating infrastructure that will shape our city. MetroNet is the long-term plan to support this transformation through improved transport connections and integrated station precincts. MetroNet is also a different way of planning. A team from across WA Government are working together with key stakeholders and the community to balance transport and land use outcomes, creating places that people can easily live, work and play in. By the end of Stage 1, Perth will have approximately 72 kilometres of new passenger rail and up to 18 new stations, supporting the development of new, transit-oriented communities. Metronet will see new rail lines built to Ellenbrook and the airport, and existing lines extended to Yanchep, Bellevue, Byford, and from Thornley to Coburn. It'll also build new stations, remove key level crossings, and add WA-built trains to the network, making it easier to travel across Perth. Over time, Metronet precincts will support local jobs, connect community centres, and offer a range of housing options for our growing population. To find out more, visit metronet.wa.gov.au.
Okay, so now that we know what Metronet is, I wanted to start from the top down and just better explain where Metronet sort of fits in with the greater picture. So we've got a series of government policies that Metronet forms part of, all talking to the Waterwise outcomes that we're achieving. So first of all, you've got your Waterwise Perth Action Plan. We've also got the Western Australia Climate Policy, and lastly, we've got the Metronet Sustainability Strategy. So the Western Australia Climate Policy was released at the end of 2020, and it offers an alternative for sustainable transport choices. So Metronet's key deliverable under the Western Australia Climate Policy is to deliver the trains to get people off out of cars onto public transport. So there's a number of actions in there, including a climate resilient water supplies. So Metronet forms a part of this with the government leadership, and we're requiring water service providers to build climate responsive design into long-term planning and water supplies. So that comes into play not only in our stations, but also our precincts as well. So any development around our new communities, we're aiming to have sort of best practice in water-wise development. Under the Waterwise Perth Action Plan, we have currently got action number 36, which is to embed water-wise outcomes into the design of Metronet precincts. We've had the transition plan released at the beginning of this year, and looking forward into the next Waterwise Perth Action Plan, where our future action will be to embed water-wise outcomes into the Metronet program of projects. This is just to better clarify that the Waterwise Perth Action Plan is covering both our projects and our precincts. Our key guiding document, though, within our office is the Metronet Sustainability Strategy. So this sets our targets across all areas of sustainability, but in particular interest, we've got objectives around water efficiency. So our primary objective is water efficiency and fit for purpose water source is maximised on all projects. And we've got some clear targets around that, including 20% reduction of whole of life water. So that includes both construction and operation. So we're looking for a 20% reduction over the life of the baseline assessment. We are looking for appropriate water sensitive urban design measures to be incorporated into planning and design of station precincts and transport infrastructure, including the water management systems. And we're designing for zero potable water use beyond establishment periods for our landscaping at our stations. So these aligns with the UN SDGs with water sanitation and resource consumption. So the Metronet Sustainability Strategy, water outcomes are peppered throughout the document. So this is ranging from requirements for local water management strategies, precinct plannings to identify water saving opportunities, LCAs, water efficient fixtures and fixture fittings in our station designs, water submetering, leak detection. So it is littered throughout. It's not just a single point of contact. So it reaches out to all different aspects. But what have we actually done to achieve all this? It's all very well and good to set some targets, but how are we travelling? So some of the key deliverables under the sustainability strategy are what we known as strategic initiatives. So there's a number of strategic initiatives that have been designed to provide further information, guidance, and fill that gap that we believed was there for those areas of interest. So in particular for water, strategic initiative number 8 was to develop a water-sensitive urban design guideline. So this one was developed as cross collaboration with Water Corp, Department of Water, our PTA, which is the Public Transport Authority. They're the operational arm of our rail, and Metronet. So this is a practical guide given to all our projects and precincts on what is it that we actually want to see with water sensitive urban design. Along with this, we also delivered a water sensitive urban design review for public transport infrastructure. So this is putting it into the real context for just transport infrastructure. This is giving them the how-to guide to do a review and to assess the viability and practicality of water sensitive design initiatives, including a set of criteria to guide the selection of suitable incentives for design implementation. Another one of our strategic initiatives was also climate change and resilience. So we've also delivered 2 frameworks. So these cross both climate change and broader resilience assessments. So each of our projects is required to do a climate change risk assessment and treat any very high or high risks, as well as a broader resilience assessment in line with your IS rating schemes. So this one also looks at broader shocks and stresses such as water efficient, water security, droughts, storms, flooding, and under each of their projects, they again have to assess and mitigate any high or very high. So this is a station transport infrastructure specific framework that each of our projects have been provided. We also, our final strategic initiative that is in its final stages of drafting is a landscape urban design guideline. So this, like the water sensitive urban design guideline, is a visual guidance to provide a detailed indication of what we want to see in each of our projects. So landscaping is obviously a challenging one where we're both wanting to see water efficiency, but we also want to have viable landscaping which requires irrigation. So it's a challenging compromise to reach that we're working through. We've also completed, in conjunction with other government departments, opportunities registers for both, again, transport infrastructure and precincts. So this looks at identifying any opportunities within the region, the surrounding community, or the station for ideas and opportunities to implement water sensitive urban design, water efficiencies, and these are tracked throughout the project. So the key features with these is they're allocated to particular people. So there's responsibility, reporting requirements, and these are sort of gone back and forth between us and the delivery partners to make sure that they're being implemented where we can. So how are we tracking so far on our projects? So most of our projects are in construction phase at this point, so we haven't seen the outputs of operation, but during construction, where most of our water is used for dust suppression, and we've been able to achieve a 97% potable water replacement at this stage. So essentially during construction, we've managed to use bores and other initiatives on site, reducing that demand on the potable water supplies. And a couple of case studies from a couple of our projects just to finish it off to show that what we're doing on site. So one of our earliest projects was the Forestfield Airport Link. So this is a connection from our base water station through to our airport. And it is a tunnelling project which goes underneath both our Swan River and our airport. Now during tunnelling, they use massive amounts of water to run the tunnelling machines. So the project had some ideas in place on how to minimise their impact. And so they developed this idea. So the project water usage didn't stop when the construction had finished, and as such, the design of the project had included the implementation of smart monitoring as well. And, apologies. So during construction, the expected amount of water to be used during construction was reduced by 29% through the use of recycling of recycled water through the tunnel boring machines. So those tanks you can see, what that would do is it would recycle, as the water was used, it would send it back up to the surface, settle out any sediment, send it back out again to be used to continue on tunnelling. So this managed to save about over 350 Olympic-sized swimming pools of water. And my final case study is from one of our precincts. So this is one of the precinct planning that I was talking to earlier. And essentially, it was a collaborative design. So the area had massive drainage issues. So what we've managed to do is, in conjunction with Whiteman Park next door, which is a conservation area, is develop a whole new drainage system. So this has improved the development opportunity on the eastern side of the main road that you see there. So we've now pushed all the drainage onto the western side, and all that draining is leading into an existing stormwater system. But they've actually developed it as, well, they're planning to develop as a living stream. So this living stream will provide lots of benefits through amenity with streetscape appeal, with additional plantings, better for the surrounding environment. It will provide natural stormwater quality management and a better outcome for all. So Metronet has been achieving some great things in this water space, but we've still got a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, for your input. I'd now like to welcome our final speakers, Greg Ryan, Member of Development Western Australia's Environment and Sustainability Team, and Warren Phillips, Senior Development Manager at Development Western Australia. Please welcome Greg Ryan and Warren Phillips.
Thank you. I'm just going to give a quick overview of the presentation, who we are at Development WA, and then hand over to Warren, who's going to do the trajectory of Waterwise demonstration projects, the 115 project overview, including the Waterwise initiatives and the Waterwise exemplar program. A bit about Development WA. Development WA is a state government land development agency with a wide portfolio of projects across industrial, commercial and residential across the whole state of Western Australia. Our journey towards a water-sensitive city commenced with our participation in the CRC for water-sensitive cities, which was a collaborative research program led by Monash University in partnership with UWA and WA. And the CRC developed the vision and transition strategy for Perth as a water-sensitive city. Following the conclusion of the CRC in 2021, the implementation of the vision was taken up by the Water Sensitive Transition Network. The collaborative committee of practice that was formed by the CRC and the Water Sensitive Transition Network is the backbone to the Waterwise Perth strategy. So Development WA is a partner in the state government Waterwise Perth strategy since 2019. And we have two key actions under the Waterwise Action Plan. One is to embed Waterwise outcomes in government-led development and to showcase innovative Waterwise outcomes in key developments to evaluate, share information and inspire adoption by the development industry. And Warren's going to go into a bit more detail about the innovative Waterwise outcomes in one particular project.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome Engineers Australia. It's a pleasure to be able to present to you all today about one of our sort of exciting demonstration projects, 115 Hamilton Hill. It's one of the, I guess, 4 projects that demonstrate residential Waterwise development from lot scale through to medium to higher density infill projects. And with 115 Hamilton Hill, it's a former high school site. It sits somewhere between a smaller infill project and a smaller greenfield development. The site itself is basically 11.9 hectares. It's located around about 20 kilometres south of Perth and quite close to City of Coburn and also the Fremantle city centre. The development is currently in its land sale phase. So we began looking at the site in 2018, and that initially was environmental investigations, looking at the demolition of the buildings. Civil works were undertaken and completed in 2021, and we'll be starting stage 2 development next year. The project on completion will deliver around about 244 dwellings. 244 lots, and that would be 312 dwellings, including the grouped housing sites and apartment sites. We estimate a population of around about 800 residents, and we're achieving 48 dwellings per hectare on developable land and providing about 16% public open space. We embarked on this project to set some pretty high sustainability targets, and we've achieved the the Enviro Development 6 leaves under the EDIA program, and that's been recertified in each year of the project. I'm going to talk a little bit about the development scale Waterwise initiatives and how they sort of fit into the Waterwise Action Plan. To begin with, this project also demonstrates some pretty amazing achievements in recycling. So what's on the slide in front of you is basically stockpiles of recycled brick, tiles, concrete, and basically the school buildings. 96% of all the materials of the demolished buildings will be recycled, and more than 80% of that material actually is going to be reused within the development. So we're using recycled material into road bases, into aggregates for stormwater infiltration, and all the works on the demolition were also undertaken using groundwater for dust suppression, which is also important to reduce our potable water use. The objectives, I guess, of the project at the public realm were to provide quality amenity. You will see there's a number of public open spaces or public parks, mitigate urban heat in a suburb that was typically suffering quite significantly in Perth summers, and to provide biodiversity and great habitat. Retention of significant trees has been achieved through retention of landform, and we've actually got split level lots to help address the different levels across the site. We're targeting a 30% tree canopy on maturity, and that's with planting of 350 new trees. Using WUSD or water sensitive urban design for stormwater management, advanced irrigation hydrozoning, and we also have a community groundwater supply scheme, which is really important, I guess, for the high water use on Perth Gardens, where we were able to supplement potable water or replace potable water with sustainable groundwater use. The landscape features recycled materials as well, and we have primarily a native plant palette. Habitat features include nesting boxes, insect hotels. We have bandicoot crossings underneath major roads, and we also have some high-tech sort of bird watering stations that are self-watering. Some of the Waterwise initiatives that have been achieved through negotiations with the local authority include permeable paving, where possible on flat sections of road. And these have been placed also close to tree plantings. The permeable paving obviously ensures that we're infiltrating water as close as possible to where it's falling, and that's obviously hydrating that landscape. We're also trialling water harvesting tree pits, which also help us deal with our drainage, but provide extra irrigation and hydration to those trees as they mature. And also roadside swales, which we've incorporated into streetscapes as landscape features, and they also contribute to, I guess, hydrating the native plants rather than using a traditional pit and pipe method to take the water to a centralised sump. On the screen now, you'll actually see some of the infiltration infrastructure that we've used. We've used, where possible, the lower cost methods of products like EcoAid, right through to more expensive concrete options such as storm trap. And we've been able to reuse the aggregates from the buildings that we recycle as part of the installation of those infiltration cells. We have a community bore, and this has been sustainably modelled so that we're basically infiltrating far more stormwater than we're withdrawing from that superficial aquifer. Under the current arrangements for community water schemes, we're able to increase the watering days during the summer from 2 to 3 days for residents. This provides better opportunities for people with trying to grow community gardens and even vegetables and things in their own homes. It will also assist us through our establishment period of our native plantings and to bring those tree canopies to, their maximum as quickly as possible. The water produced via the community bore system obviously comes at a cost with electricity, but in comparison to the water that we generally use for new development, which is coming from desal plants, there's a 65% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Initiatives at a lot scale. Also, we've taken learnings from previous projects, bringing those to the level of when people are purchasing lots and how they're developing their homes. We have a number of different typologies on the site, ranging from apartment sites through to compact homes, split-level homes, townhomes, and more traditional sort of double-storey family homes. Objectives, I guess, in relation to scheme water is to reduce our reliance on scheme water, utilising local water sources, and also ensuring that the development creates cool microclimates, which are very important for Perth climate. On the lot scale, we have above NCC level of water efficient fixtures. We're providing dual plumbing to toilets and washing machines for rainwater supply on lots above 220 square metres. We have efficient irrigation with climate control scheduling, connection to the community bore for each of the lots, and we're also retaining stormwater on lots at 1% AEP, and that's that 1 in 100 event. Now, this is different to standard practice in Perth, and we've been able to get that through the City Council as a trial. What it does mean is each lot has to contain more stormwater on site, so we've actually provided a $10,000 rebate, which contributes to the rainwater tank pump, the smart irrigation controller, and also to the stormwater drainage and the additional soak wells that might be required. Landscaping within the homes. So we have design guidelines that basically seek to increase what would normally be provided on a typical residential property in terms of outdoor space and areas for deep root zones for trees, reducing as much as possible the hard stand and those areas that increase the heat gain, providing greater areas for stormwater infiltration, shade and habitat. And you can see the numbers there. They're quite ambitious, and to date we've been seeing some great homes being designed that meet these objectives. We also require that there's no artificial turf provided to the verges. This is a chart that basically looks at somewhat old study from 2010 of the average kilolitre per person per year consumption of potable water in Perth. You can see there as we move down the scale where we're achieving savings. So we're basically looking at around about 70% less, 60 to 70% less scheme water being used throughout the development. And that's obviously quite significant with Perth's drying climate and our reliance upon desal water for potable water. So 115 Hamilton Hill isn't just about this project. It's about, I guess, leading industry collaborations with the City of Cockburn, the Water Corporation, Department of Water and Environment, and also with our consultants, Josh Byrne and Associates. And essentially the development's been set up as an exemplar so that we can take people through tours. We can develop handbooks and guides through the process on how we achieve these outcomes. And you'll see here there's a number of phases that we're following on our journey, which essentially is mapping from planning, design through to construction, to house construction, and then wrapping it up with completion of public open spaces, completion of finished homes, and actual real-time monitoring of the water use. Now, the project, I guess, fits in as government leadership and aligns with strategic directions of the Waterwise Perth Action Plan and the Waterwise Water-Sensitive Transition Network. And it's aimed at, I guess, de-risking innovation for industry. This is an image showing an extract from our Guide to Waterwise Development, which was released last year. And this basically is a ready Reckner type handbook, which consultants on various projects and developers can use to implement some of these initiatives into their development. I touched briefly, I guess, on the real-time monitoring. So we're setting up in collaboration with the city and also with Western Power, who own the light poles. We're going to have basically a LoRaWAN network that will using a new system called Huey, which enables smart monitoring of the water meters. And this will be able to be app viewed by the residents, but also studied by researchers. Important part of the project has been our consultation with the local community, and that began very early on in terms of aspirations for a sustainable development, tree retention, habitat retention for the black cockatoos, for example, and also just the other flora and fauna that exists in the southern bushland area. We've held a number of community sessions, industry events, site tours, and written communication pieces, which include things like the Waterwise Guide. That really wraps up 115 Hamilton Hill and how this development fits in with the Waterwise program at Water Corporation. And really it's just one of four developments that we've been able to deliver in the last few years. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Greg and Warren, for your presentations, and to all of our panellists for joining us here today. It's now your turn to get involved as our audience members, so we are going to jump into our Q&A session. Please continue to ask questions of the panel members via the chat box, including who your question is to be directed to. Unfortunately, I will be passing on Warren Phillips' apologies today as he's unable to stay with us, but rest assured that Greg is available to answer any questions. So I'm going to kick off. I mean, that was such an impressive presentation, and it's incredible what is able to be achieved through the integration and collaboration that has clearly been practiced between all of these organisations. The first question that I'd like to ask is, how has the Waterwise partnership benefited your organisation beyond what you could have achieved alone? And I'm going to ask both Winsome and Mike to respond to this question. Winsome, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. Effectively, You guys will know as engineers that water is not really anyone's core business except for the water agencies. So Department of Water and Environmental Regulation and Water Corporation, we work together really well and really closely. But in adopting a water stewardship approach, as in a system stewardship, we really need everyone on board to create those very holistic outcomes that are required for a water sensitive city or a water-wise city. So I know that Greg and others, we've all mentioned the participation in the CRC for water sensitive cities, and that was really founded on the concept of multidisciplinary approaches to wicked problems. And so the partnership approach has really helped us to accelerate that transition for Perth and Peel. And it means that we can tackle these really complex problems in the planning system and in the way that we deliver urban development, as well as our water supply demand balance, and obviously tackling climate change in a really holistic and multifaceted way. So from the point of view of being the system steward of water, at the department, it really helps us to get that work done in a cross-government and much more joined-up way. And the outcomes that we reached in the first sort of 2-3 years of the program have been far greater than anything we could have just achieved with Water Corp together in the water portfolio. Mike, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Wyn. I just wanted to give one quick example of some of the really great work that has happened because of the excellent working relationship that the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation have with the Water Corporation. The examples on the Water Corporation's groundwater replenishment scheme, which is where they take treated wastewater and inject it into the deep aquifers of the Gnangara system, and then that's stored and abstracted for public water supply. And it's becoming a really important climate-independent water source for Perth. And the department worked with Water Corporation on the recent expansion of the groundwater replenishment scheme using information from our new Perth Regional Confined Aquifer Capacity Project. And between the two agencies, we identified and work done under that study, that Confined Aquifer Capacity Project, we identified injection and abstraction locations that optimise the outcomes of water levels across the Gnangara system. So it actually, the net, so that the scheme, the groundwater replenishment scheme, actually has a net benefit to water levels in key areas that help support important natural environments to the north of Perth. So just one example of some great work the department does with the Water Corporation.
Thanks, that's fantastic to hear. I'm going to throw the next question across to David. And this sort of leads on from that theme of, in terms of having quite a number of organisations involved. How do you communicate effectively across such a broad program with so many agencies involved?
Well, there's a really good communications framework that's been established through the Waterwise Perth Action Plan. And we have regular meetings, we have steering group meetings, we have working group meetings. So the steering group meetings, for example, are, with all the relevant director generals, the people, the big bosses, so the top down. And then we have those of us who actually have to get in there and implement things. We meet regularly as well. We also do simple things. There's a Teams comms site where information's shared and we all have real-time access to it. So just simple things there. And we pick up the phone or email each other regularly and talk, meet regularly. It's been great.
Excellent, thank you. I think it really highlights that need for the use of not only technical skills. These are not just technical problems. The problems are much bigger than that, and the collaboration and integration and some of those other skills that people bring to the table are so very, very useful to solving these problems. It does sort of lead to some questions that I want to throw across to Antonietta, and I think a really key question that we need to ask today is, how can engineers contribute to Waterwise City's objectives and outcomes in their work?
Yeah, great question. Look, we know that engineers are so important for shaping our urban communities in the design and planning. In terms of how they can contribute, I think engineers are well aware of the importance of those multidisciplinary teams. So, everything from people who are social scientists, ecologists, landscape design, and so on. And it's when we all get together that we come up with the best solutions. I think a challenge as well is around the economic valuation frameworks that we use for option analysis, and making sure that they're really holistic in picking up those broader societal and environmental benefits.
Antonietta, what are some of the barriers that exist in Western Australia to consider stormwater as a resource to use for irrigation?
I think the biggest barrier we've got here is that, obviously the period of time over our long dry summer is when we do most of our irrigating, and we can go 3 months without rainfall. So it's, the rain comes when we don't need it. So storage is the issue. We do have some successful examples running. The City of Kalamunda has done a managed aquifer recharge scheme where they're harvesting drainage water, injecting it into the deeper aquifer, and then using that when they need it in summer to irrigate their public open space. But I think there's, growing interest in diversifying and looking at those local sources, particularly as groundwater allocations become, fully allocated.
I've had a couple of questions come through from attendees about the changes to residential bore restrictions, going from the 3 down to 2 days of irrigation, and wondering how it is expected that this will impact on the demand of potable water for people to maintain productive fruit and vegetable gardens, and how will this impact on people's use of water in the scheme? For example, will there be changes to the amount of hand watering, or a complete switch across to the scheme? So this one, I've either Mike or Antonietta, I think, to answer this question.
Do you want me to start?
Yes, please.
I guess, I think firstly, you can have a productive vegetable garden on 2 days a week in Perth, but it might just mean that you are unable to grow vegetables in the very hottest months of the year. And obviously there are other really important factors other than water that to get right for a productive veggie garden, if you're being an efficient water user, including getting your soil right, using wetting agents, compost and shade, that sort of thing. We do expect a bit more hand watering from some garden bore users that don't have a hose connected to their bore, and that might lead to a relatively immediate. The garden bore roster change comes into effect in September this year, and so that may have an effect in cause an increase in scheme water in use, especially on the really hot days. We expect the installation rate of garden bores may decrease due to the roster change as more of the demand in new areas is met by a scheme. However, the rate of installation for garden bores was already going down because lot sizes are getting smaller in Perth. We do expect a gradual shift to scheme as garden bore owners choose to not repair their bores. But importantly, an increasing portion of scheme water is being sourced by climate-independent sources, so from desalination and groundwater replenishment, which means that the increases in scheme water use shouldn't have these negative impacts on our environment that garden bore use at the current scale is having in some areas.
Thanks, Mike. You did touch there in terms of those water sources. There's a question here about what is Western Australia's strategy towards water and drought in Australia? and how does desalination fit into that? And I'm actually going to tie in a second question that also asks, what are the alternative sources that may be available?
And did you want to do this one, or shall I go?
Yeah, I don't mind kicking off. I guess in terms of, I think Perth's been really successful at adapting to climate change. So diversifying our supply is one of the key pillars of that. Managing demand is the other, and then developing new sources, including looking at those alternative sources. So we've really got those three pillars to our strategy to adapt to climate change into the future.
And Mike, did you want to add anything to that one?
I'll comment that. So I guess as Perth's climate has dried, we used to rely almost solely on surface water. And then as our runoff into dams decreased with reducing rainfall, we switched largely to so that groundwater made up a significant portion of our public water supply. But then as our groundwater levels started declining, we realised that we needed to reduce groundwater use in line with climate change. And so that's when desalination started to be brought on. And so I guess the future for water sources is Perth is continuing to go down the climate independent water source. And that isn't necessarily just desalination, but also it's likely that we'll have more groundwater replenishment into the future, and other alternative water sources, including subsoil drainage that Ant talked about in her presentation. And often, because of storage, often the alternative water solutions are linked to managed aquifer recharge, so which allows you to store that water for use in the hot summer months.
Winsome and Antonietta, I'm keen to get your thoughts on what does effective collaboration look like between government and utility, and how, and more broadly, reflect on the collaboration across stakeholders through this water sensitive transition network. So I might pass to Winsome first and then Ant.
So sorry. So for those of you that don't know, the Water Sensitive Transition Network is a WA group. It was born out of the participation in the CRC for water sensitive cities, and it's very much a self-led group. It has no sort of statutory or government formality, but everyone sits on it. So all of us that are part of the Waterwise program of work, and we've got local governments where it's actually important to this space, developers, private industry, academia. And so again, it's that very holistic, multidisciplinary approach. So in terms of that collaboration, I would say that the Waterwise program of work for the state government would not exist without that group having done the work that it has done and continues to do. And we've now managed to, under the Water Sensitive Cities Australia, give it a more formal role in leading some projects to be delivered for WA and an input into national projects. So that has been really successful and is based on a coalition of the willing, really, and it's a community of practice. And so lots of sharing of best practice and innovation and trying to get things done around the edges. And I would say that that would be my reflection on the relationship between the department and Water Corp as the biggest utility for water in WA, is that I think it's fair to say that Water Corp consistently goes over and above and beyond what you might expect a utility's core business could be. And so we are all working in that space that is not necessarily our job, our pure job title or our statutory responsibilities. We're always going above and further than that. And I think that's what makes the collaboration work so well. But I will flip to Ant and see what her take is from her side.
Yeah, thanks, Gwen. Look, I think, we've talked about the CRC for water sensitive cities and the work they did early on in getting key stakeholders together and going through a workshop process of visioning and strategy development. And the transition network, that work was done in 2015. And the transition network, they're so passionate and committed to Waterwise Perth that they've continued to meet and go from strength to strength. They've got a shared vision, and that's been so important that we, and I know the partners on the Waterwise working group as well, we've really got a shared vision that we're all committed to and quite passionate about achieving. And then got sort of those shared transition strategies and plans that we all work towards. So it's very coordinated. But it's very much about the relationships, that commitment, celebrating. We do like to go for a beer when we celebrate the end of the year. But just fantastic relationships and trust that's been built up.
Sounds like that's working really well. I'd like to throw a couple of questions in Kelly's direction. Kelly, would you mind sharing some of your key learnings over the last 2 years, please?
Sure. So this probably echoes a lot of what we've already heard from the others. But I guess Metronet has been a similar project to other major infrastructure projects around Australia where it's sort of grown organically over time. So we've had new projects coming online, changes in scope, and along with COVID coming on board, extremely fast-paced. So a lot of our work has been fast-tracked as economic stimulus. But some of the key learnings, I suppose, come back to what everyone's talked about is collaboration. I think it's key that don't just assume that message is being provided. Reach out, have meetings, connect with everyone involved. Early inception has also been key. Like many sustainability initiatives, if you try and do it at the tail end, people see it as a cost inhibitor. You don't really see best outcomes. If you sort of getting in early, that's probably the best way to get outcomes. And for, I guess, the transport infrastructure side, one thing that we've found is setting of clear goals and targets and making them accountable. So all our projects are committed to quarterly reporting as well as annual reporting, making them accountable for what they're delivering as well.
Thanks, Kelly. A couple of people have asked what is quite an important question. Where can they find a copy of the document, the Guide to Water Sensitive Urban Design for Public Infrastructure?
That one is just an internal document at this stage. We are trying to get that one up on our website, but obviously a bit of a process to go along with that one. But once that hopefully goes live, that's where it will be found. But obviously there's always a process to get things public first.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to ask a couple of questions of Greg now, specifically in relation to developers and how they can really make a difference. How can developers implement water-sensitive city initiatives when facing some local government authorities who are not ready or don't have the capacity to take on water-sensitive urban design assets?
Thanks, Alicia. Good question. I think that's what the 115 exemplar has been about. It's really about having a vision and objective for the project very early, and in terms of helping to get buy-in, and that's not only the whole project team, but also the local government authority. And that, I'd say the next stage in that then is checking in with local government policy. What's their Waterwise Council status? Have they done any water sensitive city benchmarking or any other strategic urban greening or livability initiatives that you can really value add to through a project approach? We've been lucky at 115 where the City of Cockburn is quite progressive, but even then there have been challenges in terms of getting some of the initiatives agreed. Things like permeable paving in street scapes, for example, or even in roads. But it's been a case of early engagement and trialling and bringing people along for the journey.
Do you have any other suggestions in terms of how developers can challenge the status quo and the businesses as usual practices without encountering problems such as delays in planning and development approvals?
Yes, for sure. Well, I think, again, having the agencies involved at an early stage, and we're lucky in WA in that we have drier, Department of Water and Environment Regulation, and the Water Corp pretty much on board with the whole water sensitive cities thing. That can help in terms of getting some different approaches, perhaps sped through, well, not sped through, but at least considered. And I think everyone realises that we've got major challenges ahead of us. So I think in the spirit of innovation and trying to get better outcomes, I think that's probably one of the other benefits of this cross-government collaboration. We've still got a long way to go. I mean, I think we've tackled a fairly easy site here at 115, which is deeply draining sands. I think, as Ant intimated, a lot of development now is in much more difficult terrain, which is generally flood-prone in winter and completely dry in summer and lacking in groundwater. So there are challenges ahead, but hopefully we're on a good footing to address some of those issues.
I'd just like to add to that, Greg. I think, a great thing about Development WA is really that commitment to sharing the learnings from their projects to help industry come along the journey. And the Waterwise Development Guide that Warren and Greg talked about is really capturing how do you get through the planning process and for these innovative waterwise developments. So, yeah, it's that real providing proof of concept, but then also just sharing the learnings around the planning process as well.
And I've also got a question here about data quality and what role does increased data quality play in the Waterwise program outcomes, especially around loss prevention and network optimisation?
Yeah, sure. Look, the data we got from the home study was just incredible in terms of the insights that it provided us. So having that, high quality, high frequency data to understand water use better than we ever had in the past has just been fantastic and really been able to help us target our demand management initiatives. In terms of non-revenue water, again, really, really important to get a better understanding around that. And we're looking at doing a pilot project of smart metering to look at that issue.
And what is the most advanced technology that you've seen implemented in the Perth region?
The most advanced technology, look, again, I think the home project was really leading edge, and there were a lot of challenges in dealing with a project of that size, billions of data points, developing the algorithms, all that sort of stuff. So that was probably our most challenging project technically. But I think the behaviour change and the social projects are probably still more challenging. I know we've done a lot of great work, a lot of education, a lot of messaging, incentives, those sorts of things, but really shifting that water knowledge in Perth has been one of the more challenging targets under our Waterwise Perth Action Plan.
Greg, I've got a question here for you just relating to the use of purified water or fit for purpose water being used in construction. We've got an attendee who is curious in terms of how energy use will be minimised through wise reuse of recycled water. Can you comment on that one?
Yeah, well, look, that's something that we haven't really had to do in our construction project so far because groundwater is generally made available for construction, even if there might be restricted allocation later on for development. So we're very lucky because that's a low energy source of water. And we haven't really had the opportunity, I don't believe, to trial recycled water, but there's certainly where groundwater isn't available, it's probably the next best solution. But getting it to a suitable quality would probably be the main cost impediment, I think. I don't know, Ant, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you're right, Greg. Like, we've done quite a few feasibility studies around wastewater recycling and stormwater reuse for alternative sources, and it's that economic argument, I suppose, where if you have got free groundwater available, that's always going to trump investing in alternative sources, and then how it stacks up against scheme. So yeah, we continue to evaluate alternative sources, but they're sort of costed against our traditional supplies as well.
And whilst we are talking about cost, Greg, how did the cost of the Hamilton Hill development compare to other developments? And it's been asked, why is this sort of approach not being done more often?
Hey, look, that's a good question. Development WA operates as a government trading enterprise, so we do have to meet a hurdle rate for all our projects, which means they have to be commercial. So all of this is done really on that footing. The project is still making a profit, and Warren's not here to answer that question, but I don't think there's really a great cost impost. I mean, we are providing a $10,000 rebate that Warren referred to for some of the on-lot initiatives, just to help people get across the line, because housing is pretty expensive these days. And the project is designed to be affordable, but it's affordable in terms of reasonably small lot sizes, I guess, which a lot of effort's going into making the public realm and the water sensitive initiatives and the green infrastructure and the tree retention that really add that amenity to such an area. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you. We've also been asked about the recording of the session. Yes, this session has been recorded and will be available for people to watch in their own time or share within their networks. It does really bring us to the conclusion of our session today. We have run a little over time because we have a lot of questions, and apologies that we haven't managed to get around to answering all of those questions today. Please join me once again in thanking Winsome McLaurin, Mike Hammond, Antonietta Torre, David Jones, Callie Cummings, Greg Ryan and Warren Phillips for their time and input into this session. I'd like to thank Engineers Australia's industry partner, Water Corporation, for their support hosting today's session. To all attendees, please complete a short feedback form which is linked in the description box below to help us to improve and plan for future sessions. Thank you again for joining us today. We appreciate your attendance and hope to see you at our next Thought Leaders session. Have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye.